So you want to fish Lake Biwa. That's what I'm guessing based off of if you clicked on this video. Got this question a lot. I just recently posted on my Instagram trip to Japan, and of course, being a bass fisherman, you have to go to Biwa, and so got a guide and went out to Lake Biwa. So I'm going to talk about that. Things that I wish I would have looked into a little bit more, things that were different, and just basically give some rundown. If you're here trying to fish Lake Biwa, then here's what you should know. So first off, Japan's a pretty interesting place. It's an interesting country. It was a fun time. It was a fun trip. But the rail system of all the places I've ever traveled, very, very confusing. So first, get your phone, get Google Maps, and you can actually type in like where you're going, where you want to go, right? And then use your current location. It'll tell you the public transit, and it's very, very good of telling you go to this station, even like west, east, north, south, exit. Like it'll tell you that. Go to this platform. It makes it very easy to get around. One of the biggest things though is if you read stuff online before you go, the rail system is very confusing to use. So, helpful tip. Don't buy rail passes. Get a card, so it's like a Pasmo card or a Suica. It's basically like Visa or MasterCard or whatever. They're just reloadable cards that you can scan, and it works for pretty much everything but the bullet train. Remember that, because buying rail passes, you'll end up with like 15 just to get to different places. Because so the whole rail system's owned by like several big companies. So you need their own rail passes to travel on. But some of them, even you need a red pass for this part and a green pass for this part. So you get on with a red pass, but if you're in a green line, which is basically the reds from here to here, and you're trying to get here, so you stay on the same train, go from here to here, you can't get out with your red pass. You gotta go buy a green pass. So with just the Suica card, it's like boom, 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 you can get everywhere. Helpful tip number one. Okay, so when I was going to Lake Biwa, I just typed in Lake Biwa guides, and I use this service called Bass in Heaven. I think it's just a guy that is basically, he knows English, so he's like your mediator to get you a guide. So I got hooked up with a guide. His name was Tomo Izuma. Fantastic guide. Honestly, best guide I've ever used. You can tell that guy's put in a lot of hours on Lake Biwa. We were running down the lake, and I'd look over at his Lowrance, and he had waypoints of everything, everywhere in this whole lake. We'd show up, and he had waypoints: sunken ship here, sunken ship here, sunken ship here, rock here, and we were fishing this big like hump, and he had where every like major thing was marked out. And then obviously he's got his old treks, and then we sit up there up front with the map, and he'd be like, oh, you could cast this way, cast this way, cast this way. Fantastic guide, fantastic service. And I know you can contact him directly through Instagram. So here's his Instagram. I'll link it in the description. But the guy has a very good understanding of bass, and he knows Lake Biwa very, very well. And people, this is the biggest question, was how are people's English? Honestly, everyone speaks English very well, especially not only just in Japan, but pretty much in the world. Any city, never had issues communicating in English. But Tomo's English we were able to communicate. And a lot of times too, we were using our Google Translate apps. Like you type in what you want on the phone, put it over, turn, he'd read it, and he'd either answer back in English or he would type it. But like I would ask him a question in English, and he might look at me a little weird, and then he would go to his phone and type in, "Did you say?" and then repeat like my exact question. So honestly, throughout the day, no communication issues. We had a conversation. He's a funny guy, and we just had a good time, right? 100%, if I ever go back to Japan in life, I'm going to hit up Tomo and hire him again. Highly recommend him. But Lake Biwa is a very unique lake. It is huge. I don't think I ever realized how big Lake Biwa was. We were running and it was like, oh, this looks like it's the end of the lake. And then, because of like, there was haze off in the distance, and you get there and it's like, oh, there's a lot more haze and a lot more haze. And I'm looking on Google, I'm like, oh, we're like halfway up the lake. And I thought we started at the halfway point, and it's just such a big lake. And there's so much like variety with it. It wasn't as clear as I thought, but I don't know if it's because it was a rainy season and we got a ton of rain. So that's why it wasn't clear, or what was going on. But I mean, it was clear, but I mean, Lake Pleasant, Havasu were clearer. But through a lot of Japanese techniques, through a lot of like American techniques too. But it was a tough day. The fish were just done spawning. The males were still like guarding fry, and he was like, yeah, we were catching bedfish a couple days earlier, and then the females were gone. And I went in there with like, he's like, do you want to catch fish? Catch a ton of fish, or catch some big ones? And I said big ones. I would have been happy with one big fish. That's what I told him. Like one big fish to say, I don't want to go in there and catch 12-inch fish. These little male guarding beds. So we did go like fish for little ones for a little bit while reached for my wife, because she went with me, and she caught 4 or 5 little bass. And then we went hunting for the big ones. I only got one bite, but it was a good one. It was a spawned out fish. It was like 6'2", probably an 8. She was nice and fat. Very long bass. I think it was like 23.5 or 24 inches. We measured it in centimeters. I'll have to go look after this video. No, this is how much it was, how long it was right here. But fun fight. We were way offshore on a big observation tower looking thing. And I mean, we were like, I don't know, half a mile offshore. And we were in like 13 foot of water fishing this observation tower, and caught the big one. I chucked right up into the middle of it with a free rig with a crawl looking bait by one of Tomo's sponsors, Infinite Seed Makers. Chucked it down there and it fell. Twitch. All of a sudden it got really heavy. Set the hook, and I had to fight this freaking giant bass. So I didn't know how big it was because my line was over basically this observation tower thing that was half underwater, half over water. So I'm sitting there like, I don't know how big it is. And then she comes up and somehow went really easy over the tower and then back into the water. And I was like, holy crap, she's here. So I sat there fighting her, got her in. Adrenaline was running. I was probably using 17-pound test, which was also the opposite of what I thought we were going to be doing in Japan. I was thinking like 6-pound test, like finesse techniques, but I was throwing cranks, I was throwing glide baits, I was throwing big heavy like punching rigs, I was throwing that free rig was probably the most finesse thing. But had a blast. Highly recommend it. Learned a ton. I threw some new baits, some new Japanese baits that I've never thrown before. I have a few of them now to go try out, but it was a fun time. Honestly, if you're looking to go fish at Lake Biwa, do it. Hire Tomo or go to bassinheaven.com and just do it. It was so much fun. It was probably the best fishing trip I've ever had in my life. I caught one 6-pound 2-ounce fish and had just an absolute blast just exploring the lake. It's a very unique lake. Man, you could spend 20 years there and not know the lake. But it's very clear Tomo's put in a ton of work. He was just the best guide I've ever hired on at any sort of fishing excursion. He really understood the fish, he really understood the lake, and he was putting us in areas that were just, I mean, they were optimal for these post-spawn big females. They were just, hey, fresh. They weren't completely ready to eat, and I just put my bait in front of one that was, and hey, that made the trip worth it. Short trip because, hey, I'm in Japan. I had other stuff to do. I was there with family, so stuck away for a little bit, got some fishing in. Probably would have caught some more if we stayed out there longer, but I was happy. I was pumped. Lake Biwa, coolest place I've ever fished. You got any questions, comment them below. I know I've been getting questions on Instagram. I've been getting questions over Reddit. Oh, let me talk about Tomo's gear too. He had a full-blown bass bow. He had a Triton. With a Yamaha 225 and an Ultra X and 2 new Lowrances. So and tons, all the rods you can need. So you weren't fishing in some little boat, skimp boat with a 9.9 horsepower to doing all this. We're in a full-blown bass boat, bass gear. They take bass fishing super serious up there. It was a blast. So if you have any other questions, comment them below. Can't think of anything else right now, but of course, if you got questions, I'm here to answer them. But make sure to like and subscribe, and get some more videos out for you.